glad you came back. Today we are going to learn to paint our own clouds and rainbow in acrylic paint on canvas. And I'm really excited to just share a couple little tips that I've come up with you. So gotta get ready and we'll get started. Much better. All right, come on. Hey, so I am, of course, a big proponent for creativity. This is the joy of creativity, after all. And I know for some people, it's not super easy to feel comfortable being creative. You might be a linear thinker, or you may feel like you don't have any talent, you can't draw anything more than a stick figure. I hear that all the time. So before we get started on the creative project we're doing today, the art we're going to create, I want to start our lesson today with the idea that just like any other exercise, creativity is almost like a muscle, and you need to stretch it and warm it up to be ready to be a little freer and more comfortable with exploring, using your hand to make beautiful lines or painting something. And for some people it's really difficult because they're more linear thinkers. I hear all the time people saying, I can't draw a stick figure. There's already the strength in your hand, because if you've written a letter, if you have been drawing anything since you were a child, you have the muscle memory to be able to do that. It's just opening up your head that is a little more difficult. And so I've come up with this creative warm-up. It's kind of like a doodle warm-up, and it really helps me, and I think it'll help you feel comfortable with making marks on a page, letting that blank canvas and that blank page stop intimidating you by just marking it. And I like to take newsprint. Newsprint paper is super inexpensive. It's available at any craft or hobby store, but if for some reason you don't have access to that, the back of wrapping paper, anything you want, and just a couple of good permanent markers, because they leave a nice, solid, intentional line. And I want you to get out of your own head and enjoy making a nice, solid, intentional line, and don't worry about it. There are exercises I'll talk about that you can try. It's really good for you to get your hand comfortable with different shapes and different patterns, because it will come in handy when you're working with a paintbrush or a pencil or a pen. And also unlocking that creativity in your head. So I like to remember what it was like to be in second grade. Of course, I also like to remember what it was like when the pen worked, but that's more like second grade. And just do loop-de-loops. And you can see I'm holding the pen in a different way than when I write. When I write, I tend to do this. But with a brush, because I change my hand position, whatever's comfortable for you. I want you to feel comfortable. You'll see me go back and forth. It doesn't really matter. It's about loosening up your mind and your hand at the same time to get ready for painting. And just by doing rows, kind of as if I was in spelling or cursive class, I'm just starting to get used to the idea that I can trust my own eye and my own measurements. I'm trying to do a similar mark all the way across, just so that I can see and trust that I can stay level. If you're not staying level, don't worry about it. This is to loosen you up, but I'm just trying to train my eye to be level about it. If you want to go crazy and go all over the place, that's fine too. But repeating patterns is a great way to get the creative juices flowing. And it's just kind of soothing. And I like to do patterns because that mathematical side of my brain wants to get involved, and I don't want it to take over. So I'm letting my hand loosely enjoy this. But whatever pattern feels right to you, or if you want to do letters, but I didn't want it to feel like a cursive exercise. I want you to just loosen up your mind and your hand with this doodle warm-up. and I'm just trying really sharp angles and testing my ability to just run a straight line. It's just getting me comfortable with that. And because in illustration we tend to do a lot of cross hatching, which is one direction parallel lines and then redirect and cross over it, it's just a nice, it just feels like, okay, I filled the page. And also in illustration, there's stippling, so if you want to just see what it's like to try and do a little pattern and shading. Some of these things are going to come in handy when you go to paint, and you'll see it come up again when we do this this next project. But see how what I'm trying to do right now is kind of create almost a tubular form just with the pen and the pattern. So just a little warm up. Great to warm up for everything, and I think people underestimate the importance of warming up your creative muscles. Okay, so for today's painting, we've already warmed up and we have done our doodle warm up on some newsprint with a Sharpie to loosen our wrists and open our mind to brush strokes and different ways to solve problems and create something that brings us joy. We are going to do a rainbow with some clouds, and you can't do this wrong. I'm going to give you a couple of techniques so that you can create your own sky and your own rainbow sighting, and it should be super, super easy. So the first thing you're gonna do is get a nice liquid white. It can be a pretty inexpensive craft white because I want to get it all over the canvas. This is going to be our base so that we can, once again, like we did in other projects, work wet on wet. And for this, I like to get a pretty sizable brush. I'm using actually a house painting brush because I love it so much. But I'm just going to get this canvas covered with a nice thick coat of liquid white. And this is just so I have a base to do all my other steps on. The great thing about this, even if it starts to dry out, is it will help establish a fade for you when you go to add the blue of the sky. And this is probably about 1.5 inches beveled brush. If you can tell, I am like, paint is flying. That's my typical that's my typical style. I usually come home with paint on the face. That's why I put the shirt on, because I'm trying to salvage some of my clothes that aren't meant for the studio, and just have that little transition where not only do I feel more creative when I put this shirt on because it gears me up, and then I do my doodle warm up and I'm ready to go. Because as you can see, my brush strokes are more deliberate because I'm comfortable with this. I think I'm gonna prop this canvas up a little bit because it's moving. And this kind of thing might happen to you. It's not a big deal. I just happen to have a piece of scrap wood. You could use a ruler or a pencil or whatever. Most of the newer easels will have a little better system than my very, very well-worn and well-loved older easel. So that's just the nature of it. When you're done doing the base coat, I always want to remind people to put your brush in water at least until you're ready to do all your cleanup at the end of the session, so you don't lose a brush. I love brushes, and it's always sad when you lose one. I've prepared my little handmade easel out of packing material. I take this packing foam that I got in a package and I cut out an easel just like a traditional easel, but it's like disposable, and I feel like I'm getting just one more use out of stuff that is coming to me anyway that I don't always have control of. So when I put on the palette, this is a cerulean blue. It's really, really good for just that one of those nice crisp skies if you don't want to do a lot of mixing of color. It's a great color to use, and you'll see when we put it up, when it fades into the white, we're gonna get a lot of nice movement. And then I've done a little pattern here of what is known as Roy G. Biv. That's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. You always find those in a rainbow, and I wanted to make sure that, well, maybe I don't have the indigo, but I'm gonna mix the indigo out of the lavender and the blue. But when you have those colors side by side in the order that they would appear on a rainbow, I'm gonna show you one of my favorite tricks for doing something really quick and easy when we get to the rainbow stage. But until then, I'm gonna go back to my broader brush. I'm gonna use this one. And I'm gonna start laying in the blue. And with the blue, I'm gonna start at the top, because I don't know if you've noticed with skies, but they start to fade as you get lower to the horizon because of atmosphere and perspective and haze and fog or whatever else is happening. So I just want to establish my skyline before I begin my clouds and my rainbow. And the really great thing is, because I've just put the white down, I'm getting a wonderful fade. Dropping brushes, that's typical too. Getting a really nice fade into the white. And I work really fast, and I want you to feel comfortable to do that too. It's why we had to do the warm-up. You can see how fast my hand's moving. It's just soothing. And each time I go a little lower, a little more white mixes in. If I'm concerned that my paint is drying, no worries. I saved that white on the plate so I can reintroduce it so it's a little wetter down here. And I'm just getting this beautiful base sky. I know there are brush strokes. I'm okay with that. I can keep them if I want that style, or I can work them out. And one of my favorite ways, I'm gonna grab a rag to work out something like that, is to grab a clean rag. I recycle paper towels all the time, and I wanna establish more of a blend. Again, you could do this with a brush, but I wanna give my canvas a little bit more personality. So I'm gonna do it with this rag. And then I'm gonna get a clean one, because I don't want to bring that blue down. I'm truly gonna get a clean one, because that wasn't clean. I got stuff all over here. And then bring some atmosphere down here. Some of the paint's gonna come off. Totally fine with that. I let my canvas flop around. That may bother you. So there are ways that you can lock it into place, but I like to pick up my canvas, and I don't mind about getting paint on my hands while I go. You'll see. If this kind of thing bothers you, I am sure in all your safety and pandemic supplies, you may have some rubber gloves if that's more comfortable for you. I live in paint, so that's kind of how it goes. So at this point, what I have is a sky blue fade that is kind of coming into clouds. Now, if we want to introduce any breaks in the clouds, then you're going to just have a stronger area of your sky blue, and I'll show you how we can deal with that later. I'm going to break the clouds up for this purpose because of how I want to compose my rainbow. But if you just want to stick to your fade, absolutely do it. You're just trying to establish the sky. So there you have just a nice easy fade. Clouds are all unique, and so whatever you paint with the canvas, you get to decide what the composition is going to be and who are the players. In my canvas, I'm going to make the rainbow the lead and two supporting clouds to anchor the rainbow into the canvas. And to do that, I'm going to kind of roughly establish what the clouds are before I drop the rainbow in with this really fun technique. So I'm going to grab another large brush and a little bit more of the white. And I'm just going to kind of establish what it is I want these clouds to be. Now, when there's a rainbow out, there's rain, and you want to have some pretty established clouds to support that weather system. I might do less talking because apparently there's a helicopter that's decided it's going to fly over my studio. Not the first time. So I'm just looking at shapes that happened spontaneously and randomly, and I'm emphasizing some of them. And the beauty of that is, in order to create nature and a randomness, because clouds, once you start repeating patterns, the human eye is really good at distinguishing when a human hand has created something. So random is key if you want to have a little bit more of a realistic effect with whatever it is you're painting or drawing or creating. I did a lot of rock sculpture when I used to build museum exhibits, and that was tough because you tend to, as a person, when you're sculpting, want to repeat motion. And once you start repeating motion, a pattern appears, and then it breaks the illusion of nature, and nature's a lot more random. So I like to do this scumbling start and then focus in on where there was thicker white paint. I'm going to say, okay, well, I didn't create this shape intentionally, but it happened when I was moving my brush quickly across the canvas. So I'm just going to play up anything that happened randomly and get back to it later. So I'm not worried about the blue mixing in. I like that. I'm just trying to establish sort of a composition of what are these clouds supporting the rainbow going to do. So we're going to step there and get ready to do the rainbow. Okay, here's the really fun part. I've come up with this way to do a super fun and kind of inspiring rainbow. I used it on an activation for a company that was promoting businesses and their messages. So I did a live painting, and when I came up with this, I thought I gotta use this in an actual paint project. So this is the first time I'm trying it in a painting with us. What I have done is I have put all the colors of the rainbow side by side, little dollops at the same width of this beveled foam brush. And I carefully drag it in there and I check. If you can see, I'm going to get a really sweet little rainbow there. And now what I want you to do is decide who your two clouds are, and I want you to do an arc. And this is where our practice before is going to come in handy. Just go for it. You can't do it wrong, but do one pass, not multiple passes. Once you drag it, you'll see what I mean. I don't mind the break, not at all. That's okay. And I've just basically dropped in a rainbow on my painting. It's so easy, and it's already there. If you're doing a children's room and you want to do a great mural, this is something that it'll kill it. It's great. Now, the next step really is to establish what your clouds are and maybe add some other colors. In this case, I'm going to keep it super simple with just the cerulean blue and the white. And then I'm going to bring some more white. I added a little water so it moves thinner. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to establish the rainbow. I don't mind that the color has dragged into it because I was working wet and wet. But I'm going to just do motions kind of like those curlicue loops that we did in our warm-up to highlight edges of my clouds that face the rainbow, because that's where a lot of light is occurring. You can see what I'm doing here. And I'm working quickly because there's another step after this. There's that other cloud. Okay. Now, the next technique we're going to use is dry brushing, and that's where I take a brush that is completely dry, and I blend these edges back for a soft fade, leaving the hard edges facing that rainbow. You can see that. In this case, get right up. The rainbow kind of peeks out. Each time you add a layer of white and go back and fade the edge, you can actually do smaller strokes, kind of like the dots that I did in the warm-up, and give some of your clouds a little bit more substance. They're wispy, they're cumulus, all at the same time. You're trying to create this atmosphere. And talk about happy. Rainbows and clouds, they make me happy. And I know kids really love them. This is a great thing to do for a children's room or for a gift for a friend if you just want to brighten their day. Super easy. Doesn't take a lot of paint. Just takes that warm up and confidence that you can't do it wrong, because it's a world you're creating. It's totally your world. You don't have to answer to anyone. This is a guide, and once you get going and create your world, it truly is yours. And have fun with it and make it everything that you wanted it to be. I kind of really like how the color is reflecting on this. I think that's a happy accident. There's no mistakes, just happy accidents. Now for me, this has been a great exercise, but I'm gonna add an anchor cloud because I think that maybe this part of the painting is a little too much negative space. So I'm gonna bring in just a little bit more to balance the composition. And again, using all the different things that we talked about to create blends. Super simple palette. I'll get my colors back, no problem. I think that this might sell it a little better for me. My world needed a few more clouds, because they are so happy. And again, I'm gonna have those leading edges facing the rainbow where all the light is occurring, because the rainbow's being thrown because there's a lot of moisture up there in the air and it's creating those prisms. effect. And a beautiful rainbow. So you know that there's a lot of sunlight happening somewhere, and you have a nice bright blue sky. So. So there you have it. Your rainbow painting.